Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Reverend Dave Forsberg, pastor at Imlay City First Congregational United Church of Christ, and I am very happy to be with you here today for Earth Day 2020. And I'm speaking to you in the backyard of my house with my father-in-law's cherry tree. And if you can kind of see behind me, the green is starting to come out. Creation around us is starting to come out. You're probably during this message going to hear some birds, the sound of robins and different kinds of wildlife. So it'll all make this Good Earth Day message that more special to you. I'd like to start today by giving you these words from Psalm 19, 1 through 4. The heavens proclaim the glory of God. The skies display God's craftsmanship. Day after day they continue to speak. Night after night they make God known. They speak without a sound or word. Their voice is never heard. Yet their message has gone throughout the earth, and their words to all of the world. Amen. So today, for this Good Earth Day 2020, a few reflections. In life, we use the word holy quite a bit, don't we? It means, of course, in our context, the Creator and God, our Creator, our Redeemer, our Sustainer, our God who is responsible for this planet that is the subject of our focus today on Good Earth Day. When I think of the word holy, I think of it in a lot of different contexts, and perhaps you do too. For starters, holy can be a place and an encounter. Holy can be an encounter and a place. I think of Moses going up to Mount Sinai and receiving the Ten Commandments and talking to God. And of course, God asking Moses to remove his sandals because he was standing on holy ground. Holy can also be a moment. And in that moment sometimes, that holy moment, we suddenly realize we are in a wonderful moment. And in the blink of the eye sometimes, it's a moment that just goes away. But afterwards we realize it was something special, an encounter with God. For me, when I've had those kind of holy moments, I've gotten goosebumps. Hair stands up on the back of my head. Perhaps it's because I tasted something. I smelled something. I experienced something bigger than myself and beyond description. God is beyond description. I don't think there's enough words in our human vocabulary to adequately describe God. I just know that when I've had what I'll call those holy moments, I think about it days and weeks later, and I wonder if that kind of moment will ever come again. Think of some of your own holy moments and holy places that you've been to when perhaps you've experienced something like that. Perhaps it was for you the birth of a child. Perhaps it was a place where you proposed to your loved one. Perhaps it's a place where you go to see the sunrise and the sunset. Perhaps it was a time in which you had some fun times playing with your relatives, or when someone, perhaps your father, took time to play catch with you. Perhaps it was your mother teaching you how to play the piano. And then years later, as you're in contemplation, like we are in these COVID-19 times, you sit back and wonder, that was a holy moment. Those were holy moments. I was blessed to grow up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and I had a lot of holy moments up there, not only with family, but in the places that I went to. I think of outside of Marquette, Sugarloaf and Hogsback Mountains, and the wonderful vistas that they allowed me to see Lake Superior and the nearby trees and the land. And on clear days on those mountains, notably Sugarloaf Mountain, you can see for miles and miles around. There's also a place that I've talked about before where in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, there are sacred forests, and I say sacred because of the beauty that you see of God around you. There is a place called the Huron Mountains where one time I was there with a neighbor and my father. And one day we were outside ice fishing. And we went into the woods and we sat down, and for a couple of minutes we could actually hear the snow coming down and hitting the ground. Those were holy moments in God's creation. Holy moments indeed. So now we're in another place in time. Good Earth Day 2020. And for me, being in this backyard with this cherry tree behind me and the hopefully soon to be found garden cropping up once I get busy planting, I will see out here a holy moment of these places. I hear the geese that are flying overhead. I see the robins next door, and all in this area for me is a holy moment and a holy space. Something that comes to mind and reminds me of my childhood and Good Earth Day and these holy moments and holy times is I hear robins here in the backyard in the morning and throughout the day. And as a kid growing up in the Upper Peninsula, I remember waking up as a young boy and also hearing the robins chirping outside. I could hear their little snits, they're fighting, talking and arguing perhaps with other robins. Stay out of my way, this is my territory, that kind of thing. It was a wonderful experience. And speaking of experiences, recently I had a time where I got up from bed here in my house. I looked outside my window, and literally a few inches away from the windowsill was a robin staring straight at me. I had just raised the blinds in my room. We stared at each other for about 30 seconds. He looked at me, didn't flinch, and for 20 to 30 seconds I would venture to guess we were looking at each other. I was looking at creation. And of course then he flew away. It was one of those wow but holy moments, those holy encounters in the middle of God's creation. So today we celebrate our encounter with the holy, God. Yes, God, our Creator. We see God around us in the people. We see God around us in the robins, in this cherry tree, in the air, in the water, in the grass. Of course, we see it in the farm fields, the places where we get food from, thanks to the farmers that work hard every day. We see the holy in our backyard gardens. And now on this Earth Day, I can't think of anything more important than talking about what can we do to preserve this planet that we are so fortunate and blessed to live on. What can we do to protect it for future generations? What can we do to protect it for future generations? I think that is very important. Very, very important. And it's something that I think we really need to ponder and think about on Earth Day. So, how are we doing so far? And as you see, the snow is coming down. How are we doing at caring for the earth? For we are charged with protecting Earth. There's been a lot of groaning lately in creation. If you remember in Romans 8, Paul says we know that the whole creation has been growing in labor pains. And of course, we see the signs of groaning everywhere these days. I think of the TV images that we've seen of plastic water bottles floating in the oceans. I think of images of old plastic six-pack rings tied around a sea turtle. I think of news about more farmland disappearing. I think of extreme weather conditions, snow receding from mountaintops, melting glaciers, and disappearing plants and animals. Perhaps you've heard it in the news recently, of course, here in Michigan about PFAS, a chemical that our state officials are concerned about relative to our drinking water, and a chemical that's already been found in some places around the state. Have we reached the point, as highlighted in Isaiah 24, where the earth is drying up and withering and the earth lies polluted and under inhabitants? Creation is groaning, but there is hope, even in the midst of the snow coming down right now. Since we've been inside in these COVID-19 times, it seems like creation has been regrouping. According to an Associated Press story, as people across the globe are staying inside to stop the spread of the coronavirus, the air has cleaned up, albeit a little, but still has cleaned up. Nitrogen dioxide pollution in the northeastern United States is down 30%. So it seems like when we stay home, perhaps the earth is getting cleaner. Researchers right now are tracking dramatic drops in traditional air pollutants such as nitrogen oxide, smog, and tiny particles. These types of pollution kill, scientists say, up to 7 million people a year worldwide. We're also finding out in these COVID-19 times and social distancing that the air from Boston to Washington is in its cleanest since a NASA satellite started measuring nitrogen dioxide in 2005. And of course, cleaner air means good for our lungs, a positive effect on our lungs, especially for our children who suffer, and adults, from asthma. We're also finding out that as we're in this social distancing and not so many people are out on the streets and on the roads, animals are coming back into places that they don't usually go into. Coyotes have meandered along down Chicago's Michigan Avenue and near San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge. Sea turtles across the globe, they are finding it easier now to be undisturbed and hatch their young and go out into the ocean, no longer confused by people and headlights from cars at night along the beaches. So friends, there's been some silver lining for wildlife and the air. It seems like they have all, in creation, got a little break from human activity, and that bodes well for the future, because it shows us already that by reducing our footprint and our impact on wildlife and the environment, we can help creation come back and be there for future generations. There's also a lot of people that are making the difference. I think of 17-year-old Greta Thunberg from Sweden, who was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for her work on activism in the environment and raising the alarm over what scientists say or call global warming. And I also think of us. What can we be doing to protect creation here on Good Earth Day 2020? Well, from where I stand today, there are many things that I believe we can do. For one, we can work with our local, state, and federal officials to see that there are measures, steps put in place to safeguard the air, the water, and the land that we all hold dear, and our farmland as well. And you're probably thinking, well, that's great, but what can I do? Well, there's a lot of small things you can do, and I'll be putting out on our Facebook page some tips in which you can use in that umbrella of what can I do. For example, wash your laundry in cold water, because by doing that, you're not using your water heater so much, and you're reducing your energy use. That means less power generation is necessary. Change your light bulbs to eco-friendly types. LEDs can emit 25 to 80% less energy than traditional incandescents, plus they last longer. Turn off the lights when you're not using them. Less energy, less power generation, lower energy bill. Use green cleaning products. You can find them in stores. They're more ethically sourced and have a lower impact on the environment. Buy a plant for yourself. Plant a tree in your backyard, like I've done here. How about a house plant? Scientists say that a house plant will produce oxygen to improve your air quality inside. Choose a flower or a herb or a plant that bears fruit, such as a tomato, a pepper, or even strawberries. That will help. Unplug sockets from the wall of your house or the power strip. When the appliances are not in use, why have them plugged in? It draws electricity. Again, less use. Friends, these are just some of the many, many things that you can do to help. Also, something else to think about today on Good Earth Day 2020. We are called as disciples of Christ and the church to be good stewards of God's creation. We are called to stand out in a society, and I believe stand out in a way to protect what God has given us and to pass on to future generations. Remember these words from Psalm 24, verses 1 through 2. The earth is the Lord's, not ours, and all that is in it, the world and those who live in it. For God has founded the earth on the seas and established it on rivers. So friends, let's do all that we can here on Earth Day 2020. Earth Day 2020. Let's ensure that we do everything possible to preserve it for future generations. Let's make every day a good Earth Day. Lastly, I leave this for you to think about in closing. We are the guardians of the earth. I want to give you two words in Hebrew. Shamrei Adama. Shamrei Adama. It means we are the guardians of the earth. And it was first given to Adam in the Garden of Eden by God. And just as God created the first human being, God placed a human in the garden to till and to tend to it, as we know from Genesis 2:15. Shamrei Adama points to how we are responsible for the protection and the renewal of this earth. Amen. Friends, thank you for joining us here at Imlay City, First Congregational United Church of Christ. I'm Reverend Dave Forsberg. Thank you for being with us today on Good Earth Day. God bless.